Hello, Internet, and welcome back to VectorClub Weekly, crushing dreams since 2012. Welcome back to episode 4, I guess week 4. I'm not really sure whether or not we should call it episode or week. Doesn't matter. We've got someone back today. Let me introduce everyone who's with me. My name is RainbowPlasma. Today I'm joined by Burned.
Hi.
PinkieDash.
Hi.
And returning from his 2-week vacation, Mr. Flutterguy.
Hello there. Hey.
So you're back from your vacation. Where did you go again? Equestria, right?
Yeah, it was Equestria. No, it was very close, Ireland. A lot of horses, a lot of ponies. So, very green.
I heard your friend saw something pretty awesome.
Yeah. My friend who I went with went to go see Deadmau5 in Dublin and saw him wearing a My Little Pony shirt. So, Deadmau5 is Brony.
Is he?
So
is he Brony?
Maybe.
Maybe. My day right there.
He seems like the kind of guy who would be a brony. Maybe he's not now, but he just seems like the kind of personality type that would end up being a brony.
He was wearing the Fluttershy Yay shirt. I mean, you kind of have to... well, I don't know. So, yeah, it was pretty cool. Missed last week's podcast, though. But thanks for Sir Scissortix for filling in.
Sirtix. No, Sirtix. Don't start this Sirtix again.
Yeah. So it's great to be back.
Welcome.
Hi.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're gonna jump you right into the news thing. I'm gonna force you to start up another news section because you've handled the group background project stuff, and there's another update to that. So
Yep.
Why don't you just recap what people don't know about it?
Sure. Well, last time there were 2 of the background projects that were completed, and now 2 more have been completed. So 1 through 4 are completely done, and you can check them out in the VectorClub's DeviantArt account, which will be posted in this the description of this video. And there's a 5th project that's going on right now that's 10 out of 11 parts done. So it's really close. It's looking really amazing. I don't know if we're actually going to keep doing these. Dark Cow always is the one who's really running them. So there probably will be some more eventually, maybe throughout the whole summer. So, yeah.
Okay, moving on. We have this little widget now on the group's homepage, the MLP-VectorClub's little group page, and it's all about people from other organizations coming to us, to our group managers, and saying, hey guys, we need some help, and because you're such a huge group, because you have so much amazing vectors and artwork in your galleries, we want you guys to help us with our projects. So when I say external organizations, I mean big things like BronyCon and Everfree. They've come to us and they've said, hey, yeah, we've got this issue, post it onto your members. We need them to help us make stuff for our things. So I think there's one there from BronyCon or Everfree. One of them was...
Yeah, it's... You can find the widget right underneath our featured widget. It's the second little box right there on our group page.
Yeah.
And we have 2 up there right now. One is the My Little Pony SVG resources being run by Mr. Abo, and he's giving away points for anyone who helps with his little SVG project. And our second one is Everfree Northwest is looking for vector artists to submit original artwork and alternate artwork like that for their art book for the North Everfree.
That's the one, yes.
Art book thing.
That's the one. That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, that's just a new section on our group. We're trying to figure out the best way of how to advertise that because we don't really want to post a journal out to you guys because it's not really within our group. People are asking us to help them out. So if you're looking for any kind of projects at all, you're bored or something, or you want to get involved in like a cool event like Everfree Northwest, then check out that little box. We'll be updating every week when we get new stuff. We'll be updating it in this podcast. So if you listen to this podcast, then you'll probably have the most up-to-date stuff.
If you're interested in helping out either of those projects, go check out the widget. Links are there. Help out.
I'll also include some links in the description below to each of the individual ones. All right, so moving on to the featured artist this week. We've got a new feature artist, as always. This week's featured artist is a woman by the name of MandyDax. Now, MandyDax is quite a popular member within our group. She's got a lot of followers and a lot of great stuff out there, mostly because of this one project that she's been doing ongoing for a long time. And it's the first thing I wanted to highlight from her. It's called the Manhattan Project, and it's just a little comic series that she's been doing with entirely vectors. and it's about the Cutie Mark Crusaders going and building some sort of like nuclear bomb, just kidding, because they can. So this is quite the popular thing, but I thought I'd put it out there because it's something that's made entirely with vectors, and it's again showing different things that you can do with vectors. So we'll leave you a link. It's quite the long. It's got I think 5 parts to it now. So we'll leave you the link to the first part in the description, and you guys can go read through that entire comic series. It's got some great custom vector work. I know she does. Almost all of her stuff is like custom faces and custom all that stuff. So she does a really good job of that. She also does a lot of background things. So, for example, the next picture is, it's got quite the interesting title. The title is "Caught Tara Strong Playing with Herself in Public," but it's actually Twilight, future Twilight beating present Twilight in chess.
It's a very clever title.
Yeah, so she does a lot of stuff like that with full backgrounds, not necessarily just what you see in the group, which is individual pony stuff, but she does group stuff and she does background things.
I know she's done a couple of the group background projects too, so pretty awesome.
Yeah, she's quite active in that, and she's also quite active in the comments of this podcast, so that's pretty cool to see. We know that not all of her stuff gets submitted to our group because stuff like the Manhattan Project is not quite perfect for a group, but she's quite active within the community, so it's nice to see.
I love her "Thanks for the 400 Watchers" vector with a big pile of rainbow dashes. It's awesome.
Yeah, that one was great. I remember, I believe that was made...
It's like everyone's dream.
Oh, God, yes. But I remember this was made, I think, around the same time as I was in MLP-VectorClub, like when I was accepted as a vector inspector. So this is one of the first ones I saw, and I remember being like, seeing this and being like, oh yes, if I get to see more of stuff like this, giant cuddle pile of rainbow dashes, then I'm totally down for being an admin.
Giant cuddle pile, eh?
Giant cuddle pile. I could just stare at this picture all day. If I didn't already have a background, that would be my background.
So adorable.
For sure.
Did you figure out which one was the original one?
That doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
I'm thinking it's the one in the middle, it looks like a filly with like huge eyes.
Huge eyes and a giant adorable smile.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, so MandyDax is a great artist. As always, when we feature our artists, she does, again, great background stuff. It's some of the lesser known stuff because a lot of our gallery is based on, individual ponies, but there's also some great stuff being done here, like with comics and with backgrounds and stuff that doesn't quite go as noticed. So we thought we'd bring up MandyDax this week because she does some awesome stuff in more of that unknown sector.
I kind of wish I was creative enough to do comics.
Yeah, I've never been funny enough to do comics.
Yeah.
Also, there's such a huge time sink. Like in this first one, part 1 of Manhattan Project, that's like 15 ponies and 5 backgrounds.
Yeah.
So, jeez.
Although if there were voice comics, you'd be sweet because just your accent is hilarious.
What?
Canadian.
My accent?
Yeah, Canadian.
Australians don't have accents.
No.
What was I thinking?
All right. Moving right along, move on to one of our most popular segments is the vector critiques. This week, we have a vector by Triox404 and his, what is this? Why yes, they are beautiful, rarity vector.
It's talking about her wings. Can I just bring up, I messed up last week, and it's the reason why I chose this vector in particular, because I wanted to kind of, make it up to the person. But last week I took some questions by a person who I called Triox404, and it's actually Triox. So Triox 404. So I messed up your name, and I also messed up the name of Millennial Dan last week. We were like Millennialden because I misspelt that and the other username. So my apologies. I don't know. I must have been like drunk or something when I was copying down your names. But I apologize for the name screw up. But I'm going to make up for it this week by doing your vector here.
All right. Does anybody see anything they'd like to point out in the rarity vector?
Yep. I'll go first. All right. So the glaringly obvious bit is, and I'm pretty sure Triox knows this himself now because he's done a few good ones, but the strokes everywhere are pointy. There are way too many nodes, anchor points, whatever, in everything. So especially if you look down at her hooves, they are the most obvious section. You can see they're not smooth, they're not curvy, they're jagged in some places. It's like some places the handles, the anchor points are broken. They're just pointing down. They're not right. Biggest thing first thing I say to everybody who asks me for critique or somebody who just wants a bit of help is use the least amount of anchor points as possible. I can't stress that enough. Doing that, and if you're using Photoshop, keeping the sets of points opposite each other, so keeping the 2 points on either side of the stroke together, that will help you keep everything smooth. Most curves on ponies can be done with 2 or 3 sets of points. So they really can be... It takes a bit of practice, but once you know what you're doing, it is fairly easy.
In Inkscape, with things like this, to keep your points not pointy like that, you want to make sure that you use the keep points contingent button.
You're going to have to show me where that is, because I have no idea. I'm not an Inkscape person, so you're going to have to show me where.
Keeps them parallel. There's 2. One makes them both symmetrical, and then one makes them round, and then one breaks them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can also see like a really, really common one where it's like really bumpy is her horn. Like that should just be smooth all the way. I think with her horn, like if you're going from one base up to the tip, back to the base, that could be 3 nodes, maybe 4.
Yep.
Yeah. With the horn, you can get away with 3.
Yeah.
You can get away with 2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a bit crazy.
It's
stretching it, but
this vector looks like it was made with Inkscape or Illustrator, but the major thing that I'd like to point out is if you look at all of the eyelashes and a lot of the other strokes and like the mouth and the nose, you can see that each one of those tips is square. And even though the paths may look pointed, it squares the end of them. And the reason for that is when the artist made these shapes, he left the stroke on. So all of these shapes have a little stroke that's the same color as the fill going around the outside of them. And to fix that and make the edges not square, all you would have to do is turn the stroke off and turn just the fill on in your Inkscape or in Illustrator. And then all of those will have sharp points. So I see a lot of submissions that have a small, thin stroke going around the outside of all the shapes. And you want to make sure that you have that off.
Yeah, for stroke and fills, it's 2 separate, completely different things. So if you're looking at, again, Rarity's horn, the outside of that, it's not one shape that you fill. Like the fill color is a completely different drawn thing than the outline. So, and actually, now that I'm looking at it, the fill color for the horn is wrong. Yeah, it's a little bit off. Yeah. So watch that as well. But for example, you would draw the outside of the horn, and then tucked underneath that is another shape with the fill. Mm-hmm. So I hope I explained that properly.
It looks like when the artist made, or Triax made a lot of the strokes, he made them using the fill method, where you trace over the outside and then the inside, which makes them look a little bit uneven. But in Illustrator and Inkscape, what you can do is you can make it with a single path and then add a stroke that is all the same pixels, so all set to 30 or whatever you're working with, and make sure those are all the same, and then convert them, stroke to path them, and turn them into fills. And then
that'll keep them smooth.
Point the ends and make sure that you have the stroke off. So that gets a little confusing for some users, because you start with a thick stroke that is set to a specific amount, and then you convert that to a fill, make sure that the stroke is off, and then just use the fill.
Yeah.
Yep. One thing I noticed in this vector is actually like where her chin meets her neck. You can see that Triax basically used a single fill for that, whereas each separate segment should be a separate stroke or fill. There's also one like where her body meets her back legs. So keep all disjointed segments as separate strokes.
So the outline of the body is all one solid shape when it should be multiple?
What?
No, he's just talking about... You see where Rarity's side of her face meets the thing?
Yeah.
Like, it should be one... Her chin should be one object placed on top of the second object, which is her...
So as of right now, all of her strokes are just one large shape. So like her chin and her neck is a shape, and then in her legs and her belly, that's another shape. When they should be multiple shapes, multiple strokes that overlap each other and hide the ends of each other.
Yep. Yeah, because right now you can see it in her chin where the curve doesn't really line up on either side of the body stroke, where it should just be one continuous curve.
You know what? That's also an issue. That's also an issue with the reference because this artist included a reference in the description for the original, and in the screenshot that they grabbed, that chin part is actually quite weird looking and lumpy. But for like a chin is a really good example. From the bottom of one ear all the way around the chin to the other ear, that should all be the same width.
Yep.
Like they shouldn't be that random lump. Even if that shows up in the show, fix that.
Right.
Because there shouldn't be that lump.
Yeah.
I think that's enough for this one because this person who submitted it, Triox404, I got your name right this week. This is made in August of 2011, so this is a long time ago, and I know for a fact that he's definitely improved.
Makes a lot of awesome vectors. So.
Yeah,
I'm just going to point out one thing in this vector because it's something I see a lot come up. The eyelashes going around her eye are above the eye white. They're coming through her eye. I see this a lot, mostly in rarity. So when you're making that, just make sure the layering's correct. Make sure the eyelashes are underneath the whites of her eyes so that it doesn't poke through the middle of her eye.
The eye blush also isn't contingent with her eye white, and you want to make sure that those match up correctly.
Yep.
And then the last thing I'd like to point out is, which we always like to point out, is the ear tip on her right ear is pointed.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to the next one because we're going to spend way too much time doing little things. So the next one is from, would you like to, Critchley B. That name's familiar, Burned.
Yeah.
From Critchley B, and he submitted a Trixie vector. This is your card by Critchley B. And would anybody like to start off with something, or can I start?
Yeah, my card was a 2 of diamonds, so she got it.
Good trick.
All right, I would like to point something out.
Go for it.
Someone in one of our group posts, journal posts, asked in our critiques that we talk about maybe perspective and proportions a little bit more. And for this, perspective is correct, but proportions are off on the vector. And proportions is something that we struggle with talking about a little because we don't. We're not a lot of us are sketch artists, so we don't sketch a lot, so we're not very good with proportions. But we know how to do things for correct vectoring. But for this, for proportions, what you would want to do is ponies. Their proportions, have their head and their body and their legs, and the sizes for those is you start with your head, and then the body is 3/4 of that head, and then the legs are the same distance as that head. So if you look at this, the neck and the body is larger than the head portion. So the neck is too long and the body is too long. The body and neck should be 3/4 of what the head and leg distance are, and that is how you would do the proportion for that.
I actually never knew that. There's something that I see a lot in common with people. When they submit something and it looks off, but they can't quite tell why it looks so off, a lot of it's because the stroke thickness is quite off. So, for example, here, if you were to take the entire stroke, that's the darker blue around Trixie's entire body and the dark purple around her cloak and all that, and just, pump it up to quite the thick outline, because people don't realize how thick the show's outlines are, but they're actually quite thick. And it's always best to, again, look at your references for even things like line thickness. So here I would probably maybe triple the thickness of the stuff around her body, and immediately you'll see a huge change in how it looks show accurate wise.
Yep.
A great place to go if you're looking for help on proportions with things like this and original sketches that you do is r/MyLittlePony Drawing School. They'll help you with everything, and they have tons of useful resources there.
Yeah,
they're great for proportions.
Huh? Anything else? Other guy?
I see where her right arm meets her body. That stroke should be just one continuous body stroke, because the arm is basically on the other side of her. So the body stroke should be cutting that. Just makes it look a little off as it is now.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to point that out.
Yeah.
She's got 2 right legs, or 2 left legs.
Yep.
Looking at that.
I noticed that there's a lot of rounded ended strokes in this, and they should be pointed. It's a lot easier if they're...
Of course you'd pick up on that.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a lot easier if the strokes are larger, but there's round ends like on the legs and then on the tip of one of the eyelashes. And also about the eyelashes, on her left eye, the bottom eyelashes there are in the bottom of the eyelash, right in the middle, when they should be on the right side. They should be on the complete opposite of the other, as matching the mirrored of the other eyelashes instead of being in the middle.
And on the left side, that nose stroke is way too long.
Her nose itself.
That
Yeah,
nose, the
top.
stroke that goes up ahead
Yeah.
should end like where it touches the eyelash.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, I think, at least burned. Guess what? The ear tips are not pointed.
I know, it's amazing.
They look fantastic, don't they?
I'd have to argue.
Uh-oh.
Pony's ears are usually, they're right in between the 1/2 mark of the head. So if you were to draw a circle, they would be right in between, they're right about the 3/4 version of the head. So this ear is a little bit high up when it should be a little bit lower. And you can tell because the head is a little bit large in proportion to the body. So the ear should be, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a little bit too high. It should be shrunken and a bit closer to the eye.
Yeah.
Also, her head should be, correct me if I'm wrong, but her head should be rounded more.
Yes.
It looks like it's the shape of Rarity's eye at the moment, and it's freaking me out a little.
It looks a bit squished. It was a similar problem with the Derpy vector last week. It looks a bit squished, whereas it should be like a full round melon.
RainbowPlasma, I'll send you a link to this guide that I've got and put it in the description. It's quite useful for when you're doing sketches and things.
All right, you're gonna have to send that to me.
Yes.
In good news,
And
sorry to interrupt, but in good news, the little glows around the cards and the glows around the horn look very well done. I don't see any complaints with that. Personally, I've never tried that. I've never tried that, but yeah, it looks great.
Yep,
and you've obviously followed some guides there, so.
Yeah.
I was literally about to say that when you interrupted.
Yeah, I got you back for last week.
To describe those, it's a transparent shape, so the outside, and then on the inside, it is another shape that just has a transparent gradient going along the outside of it with nothing in the middle.
We've got a guide for it, and I will link that in the description so that we don't go into like gradient specifics in this one because that's kind of complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's program specific very much, I think, for those.
Other than that, it's not a big deal. I mean, proportions are so important to getting the show accurate look. So any guides that you can find out there, I'm sure we'll have a couple in the description to help with proportions. I know Burned, that was a great explanation for like the head should be a certain size and the body should be 3/4.
I've been spending a bit of time at My Little Pony Drawing School, so I can help out different users with the proportions with the vectors that they submit.
Cool.
I've been part of that sub for ages, but I'm still horrible.
All right. Well, do we want to move on to our questions?
All right.
Sure.
Let's do questions.
This week for our question and answer, we have a question by FuzzyAcornIndustries.
Great name.
Right. How important and valuable do you think hotkeys are to use in Vector?
Very,
Yes.
very important.
If I were to talk to you a week ago, I would have said, they're not that important. But this week I downloaded Inkscape because I had to check whether or not my Illustrator stuff was working properly in Inkscape. And I transferred something over, and I attempted to move something, and I suddenly realized I don't know how the hell to get to certain tools because everything that I do is basically done with hotkeys. My zoom in is done with hotkeys. My zoom out's done with hotkeys. All of my tools are either on my mouse. I've got a mouse with a bunch of buttons on them, or through keyboards. Hotkeys, learning them is going to speed up your time. They're not essential. Like, you don't need to know hotkeys to do vectoring, but it's going to speed up your time. Like, it's going to be twice or three times as fast.
If you want to vector efficiently, you need to learn your hotkeys. It's something that I've been trying really hard to learn with all the programs between Photoshop, Illustrator, and Inkscape.
Because they're all so different.
I use nothing but hotkeys with Photoshop, and I'm trying to learn the ones in Inkscape. Hey guys, I'm actually liking Inkscape at the moment. It's strange.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to get used to the hotkeys.
There's a lot of awkward hotkeys in Inkscape, especially the pen tool is like Shift F6, so I have to reach across my keyboard.
Yeah, that's really weird, but yeah, hotkeys are definitely a must.
There's a lot of features in Inkscape where I don't even know where the normal feature is. I just know where the hotkey is. Like, it took me forever to find the stroke to path to show someone where it is in the options. I was like, it's just Control-Alt-C. That's all you need to know. But yeah, I feel it's really important. I use it in every program to the point where just like having to drag your mouse across the screen to find the button is way less efficient than swapping back and forth, especially in things like Adobe and Photoshop. You use the control to go to your selection tool. Like, that technically counts as a hotkey. Like, you should never go from
I
pen
love
tool
that.
to click to select tool to click to pen tool. You should just use control to go to your selection tool. In Inkscape,
I love that. I wish Inkscape would do that.
in Inkscape, your selection tool is F2, but you can't swap back and
Ooh.
forth from your pen as a fit.
Ah,
Our next question is by MandyDax, which is
Heyo, featured artist.
what's your preferred method for creating the strokes in My Little Pony Vector? In a My Little Pony Vector.
Ooh, let me pick me.
All right, RainbowPlasma, your hands up.
You. over there.
I have become one of the fastest vectors because I use something in Illustrator that only Illustrator has, which is why I love Illustrator. I use for the strokes again, just to remind people, are the darker parts on the outline. So there'd be a body stroke and a body fill. And the body stroke is the darker part on the outside. Because Illustrator has something where you can draw a line down like the center of the stroke and then just create a width. So it's even all the way down, and you don't need to fiddle with anything. And then it's also got something called the stroke width tool, where you can individually like modify how wide a stroke is. You can taper it down to a point, and you don't need to. It makes it so much easier to adjust because you're just adjusting one line, and the sides will move according to that line, as opposed to if you were going to like use it in Inkscape or Photoshop, which these guys will explain in a minute. You'd have to move both sides so that they're again the same thickness, and you have to adjust the thickness. Whereas in Illustrator, when you're using strokes, it makes it so beautiful. I love it so much.
And it does that when the strokes are converted to fills, or just when they're strokes?
Just in the strokes.
Yeah. Inkscape, the newest version, is actually gaining something similar called Power Stroke. So it hopefully will be able to do the same kind of thing, but probably not as good.
and then Photoshop is opposite.
Photoshop doesn't have anything to work with stroke to path. It doesn't have anything that works with strokes. It just has paths. So everything you do in Photoshop has to be fills, which takes a long amount of time, which is why we usually recommend Inkscape to people who are learning.
Yep. I actually prefer the fill method, just because I can later go back and I know exactly where all of my anchor points are. Because Inkscape, when you use the stroke to path feature, it tends to add in a bunch of anchor points in odd locations, which makes sense for it, but kind of tends to
It's
mess
usually
up
pretty easy to just delete those extra nodes and then make sure that the things are set to round.
Can you
And
explain? Can
fix
someone
the
explain
proportions
what
as
the fill is? Like the
Okay,
fill method?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with Photoshop. So if you go for a stroke on the side of a pony, if you go for a stroke, so with Illustrator, like you're used to, you'll just do one line down the middle of the stroke. Yeah. With Photoshop, what you do is you do sets. So you do an anchor point at the top, one in the middle, one on the other end, and make the curve, and then you have to do the same on the other side of the stroke. So you do the outline of the stroke, not one line down the middle. And so instead of having 3 anchor points like you would on Illustrator or Inkscape, you have 6. You have 2 sets.
One on the outside, one on the inside.
And then you'd use a fill as opposed to like in the program itself, you'd use a fill. And then it would kind of imitate using an actual stroke.
And then sometimes it's even easier when doing specific shapes to make the outside shape, so the stroke color, and then on the inside of that, making the fill color. You do that for a lot of different hairs with things like RainbowDash, because then you can turn the inside fill color into a group clipping mask, and then you can put the colors inside of that.
I never do that. I just use
There's tutorials for it. It sounds a little confusing, but it saves you a lot of time in Photoshop.
Yeah,
and it's something
I still do the strokes.
It's something that Illustrator and Inkscape don't have an equivalent to.
It's surprising how complex you can get with just how we make outlines. But yeah, there's like 2 or 3 ways that you can make outlines. We mostly see, you'll see the line inconsistencies because people have to do the outside and then the inside of a stroke. So it's hard to match those up perfectly, which is something that you do perfectly in Illustrator with my method. So it gets quite hard at the very beginning, and that's where you'll see a lot of those like line thickness.
Using the line width tool is definitely a really cool feature in Illustrator, but I think for our preferred method, to answer the question, our preferred method would be to use a path to outline the strokes and then make sure that those strokes are all the same width, making sure that those strokes are all set to the same width, so 30 pixels or something if you're using Inkscape or something like that, and then converting them from a stroke to a fill by using stroke to path.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Would be
Speak for yourself. Don't say our.
Well,
I love using strokes.
I recommend that method because it tends to save a lot of time. I was doing a teaching live stream, and I could do a vector abnormally quickly because I just traced over all of the outlines with the pen tool, and then so they were really thin, and then set everything to 37 pixels, and then they were instantly the width that I needed to be, and then I converted them to fills, and then made the ends pointed, and made sure they were all underlapping each other, and it turned out.
It's a really good idea that if you're just starting out with vectoring, it's a good idea to do that, where you outline the outside of the stroke, and then you come back to the inside, because it'll teach you how to use the pen tool properly, it'll teach you how to be able to adjust a lot of things, and it'll teach you how to keep that line thickness the same, so it looks, it imitates almost perfect width all the way down. It's great to learn that, because when you have to use that, you want to have that knowledge. Like, I'm only using my method now because I did that for a long time. And so I know how to use that in case I have to.
Yeah, that's definitely how I learned starting out in Photoshop, and now that I've been playing with Inkscape, it's very nice to be able to make strokes that quickly.
Yeah.
All right, well, this is getting a bit long and complex, so hopefully you guys know what the heck we're talking about, but I think we're going to stop off here for the week. So anything else you guys want to talk about?
So I was in the group Steam chat last night, and there was actually chat happening. It was like going back and forth and everything. There was actually people in the Steam chat.
Yes!
It was awesome.
Whoa.
Finally, it only took 4 weeks. Yeah, so again, join our Steam chat.
Come and join our Steam group.
Yeah, our Steam group. Again, that'll always be in the description. Submit vectors to us. We've got some stuff in the background, but we always look for more vectors to critique, questions to be answered. We look through all of them. Thank you guys for support, as always.
Send your feedback, too, because we'd like to know if we should change anything or if we can improve on a certain section or whatnot. So, yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week then.
Bye.
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 Any members who want to become or more active or help with how do I describe this?
Do you want to try that again?
Yeah, I do. I don't know how to word it. Let me think. Help with background something. Anyway, in other news, we have a new
Buy some apples!
Dude.
Buy some apples.
Yeah, buy some apples.
You're gonna be like, we have this widget on our page now for.
Why don't you do this?
I thought I was like right now.
Oh my
Buy some apples!
god.
You just ruined it.
Okay.
What?
Oh my god.
Okay.
Ah,
Buy some apples!
shit, I give up.